All right, back in the basement again, and I'm going to talk about these two barbells that a lot of people are very interested in. And these are the Bells of Steel Arch Nemesis bar, which is on top, and the Kabuki Strength Kadillac bar, which is on bottom. They're both cambered bars, great for benching. A lot of people also like to use them for rowing because the camber allows you to get more of a range of motion. And it also has grips that put your hands in a neutral position. So in theory, it's not going to necessarily aggravate someone's shoulders as much as maybe a normal traditional bench press would. Now, these things are also very different while looking very the same, as you can see, when it comes to price. So the Bells of Steel Arch Nemesis bar retails for $200, which includes shipping. The Kabuki bar retails for $500, and for me, shipping is an extra $80. So you're literally talking about 3 times the cost in order to get the Kabuki. Now, for me personally, I got the Kabuki first, and I just want to give you kind of some feedback on both of these bars and what I might suggest. So for the Kabuki, I got this first, and like most things Kabuki, I was impressed with the build quality. They do a really good job on this, right? They use this black textured powder coat type finish, which is really grippy. They use that throughout the body of the bar itself and on all of the handles. So the handles, while not knurled, still offer really good grip here because of the powder coat and the finish. And I don't think anyone's going to have a problem with this, especially if you use something like chalk. This thing will eat up chalk like no other. So if you really want to do that, you can. It offers 3 different grip positions. I'm just going to call them close, standard, and wide. And the sleeves themselves are bolt-on, as you can see. So it's different from the body. They're plated here. They come with 3 bolts per side. The sleeves themselves are standard barbell diameter, so 2 inches. That means your normal collars are going to fit. It comes with snap rings and a nice end cap, although I don't understand why, because again, it's not going to be a rotating bar or sleeve or anything like that, but the touches are nice. It's a high-end finish, which you would expect for a $600 barbell. I then got the Arch Nemesis bar second, and that probably set me up for a little bit of a failure, only because when I first opened this and picked it up, my first impressions were literally, this thing feels like a toy, comparatively speaking. Part of the reason is the finish. Obviously, this is more of a budget brand at the cost, but the powder coat is this cheap, kind of shiny and glossy feel that has a little bit of slip to it. And the actual handles themselves, while they all are knurled, it's knurled so passively they might as well not be. This thing is very slick, slippery in a sense, where the Kabuki is much more grippy. I know a lot of people that have had this Arch Nemesis bar actually use like grip tape or something like that in order to get a better feel for this. The bar itself weighs 24 pounds compared to the Kabuki bar, which weighs a true 45 pounds. So the Kabuki is nicer in that regard in terms of when you're using weights, it's easier to do the math versus this 24-pound thing. So again, picking it up in first impressions, it feels lighter because it is almost half as light. The finish isn't as nice. You can tell right here with the sleeves, they're actually welded on, and these are more sleeves like you'll find in like an Axle or a safety squat bar where they're like 1.9 inches, so normal collars probably won't work as well on this. They're also closer to the bar, so the Kabuki is about 87 inches, which is right around what a standard barbell would be, and the Bells of Steel is about 10 inches shorter than that. So you can see right here that it is shorter overall. The nice thing though about both of them is that they easily store in any kind of storage, whether it be vertical or horizontal. I have both of these in vertical storage right now, and the only downside of storing these in a horizontal fashion, like they are right now, is because of the camber and the weight, they're always going to droop down. So just take that into consideration that this would probably have to be on the bottom of any type of gun rack or anything like that for storing barbells, because this might eat into where the next bar would be in line with it. Another problem with that droop or sag, if you want to call it that, is the fact that when you're actually using this and putting this in a bench, most people would have the inclination of keeping the bar up and putting weights on. And even with a pair of 45s on either side, you still find that this thing is going to kind of roll a little bit, or has the tendency to. So initially speaking, when you have lighter weight or no weight, I would always recommend keeping it like this in the rack, just because it can be a very eye-opening experience if you have the bar in an up position and you're trying to get under the bar to set up and it just starts swinging on you. And you'll see right here in this rack, it swings kind of freely. One of the things I want to talk about is the width of these bars. They are very similar in terms of how wide they are in the body. In this Rogue rack, which is 43 inches wide, they don't really have too much of an issue hitting the actual uprights or with the J-cups or anything. There is a little bit of play, but not much. There's about 1 inch or 2. So if you have a rack that's 41 inches wide, I think one of the things you might find is you're going to hit this really close to the uprights, and depending on what kind of J-cups you have, it's going to get pretty close to doing some potential damage to your equipment. Just something to keep your mind on if that's important to you. Now, as far as usability goes, the one thing that the BoS of Steel sets itself apart on is the actual lat attachment it has up top. So this could potentially be used as a lat attachment. I say potentially just because for me, someone who's training at home, and I don't have a ton of space here necessarily, especially where my lat pull down machine is, my cable machine, it's kind of wedged in the corner. Connecting this and having a 70+ inch lat pull down attachment isn't really going to fly. It just doesn't fit for me, and I don't imagine many people will. If you really want to and you have the space, you could. The fact that this is, again, only 24 pounds means it's much easier to connect to a cable attachment than the Kadillac bar. And I think actually earlier versions of the Kadillac bar may have had some kind of attachment that would allow you to do that. I believe you can denote that by if it has a hole in this X member right here. I think there was some kind of hook you might have been able to put on there. I could be misremembering, however. But in that case, if you were going to use this for some sort of lat pull-down attachment, you could always just take the sleeves off, even though that's kind of going to be a pain in the ass. But actually using this for things like benching or bent over rowing, regardless of which one you're using, the experience is oddly similar. Now, obviously, the Kabuki is built better. It feels better. It's more true to a barbell in terms of the weight and just using it in general. But in terms of the camber and the handles, you're really not going to find that much of a difference. I think the BoS of Steels end up being basically an inch wider. So it still has the close, the standard, and the wide grips. And on average, they're about an inch longer than what I found on the Kabuki, so very similar. The weight balance on both are pretty good. The fact that the BoS of Steel one actually ends up being a little bit narrower, that might be easier for people to make sure that they're gripping in the middle of the bar. But overall, a very similar experience. So when it comes down to it, my recommendation for you on which one you should get is going to be it depends. If you're going to add this bar in as something as a variation or something you're not going to be using a lot of and you just want to get something like a camber bar to add into the mix, I think the BoS of Steel is going to be the best way to go. It offers a similar experience for a tremendous amount less. Now, obviously, it's not as good of a barbell as the Kabuki. I'm not debating that. There's no question. There's no way you could make that argument stand up. If price was not a concern here, the Kabuki wins hands down. But given that this is a third of the price and does just as similar of a job, in my opinion, with maybe some upgrades to the grip if you need to do that, I think, again, for most people that this makes sense. Where the Kabuki makes sense is for those of you that might be enthusiasts and just like nicer things overall. Maybe you have the money and the budget isn't a big deal to you. This is definitely the better barbell, as I said, from the bolt-on sleeves, which are plated, which are actual size. You're not going to have to worry about getting special collars for them necessarily. The fact that, again, the texture on this is much better, easier to grip. It's a 45-pound bar, and you don't have to worry about having odd weights on there. The Kabuki is by far the better bar, and if you're just interested in getting the best cambered bench bar you can, the Kabuki is the choice in that instance. But either way, you can't really go wrong. Both serve their purpose very well, and both are very similar in execution as far as usability goes, in my opinion. But if I answered or didn't answer something that you were kind of thinking of, let me know in the comment section below, and I'll be sure to give you my 2 cents. In the meantime, as always, thanks for watching, and stay big.